So I'll just give you a short rundown on where the major problems are, and then where we see signs of hope coming out of the digitalisation of the industry. Essentially, it's impossible to exaggerate the importance of the built environment to the rest of the economy. The British government regards the construction sector as the enabler of the rest of the economy, but it has a very limited analysis of what the sector consists of. It thinks it's about 7% of GDP. My view is it's between 15 and 20%, because the real deal is the combination of the property sector, the design and construction sector, and the facility management sector. And they all overlap. It's a Venn diagram. I shouldn't be doing diagrams with my hands, I should be doing them on the screen. But in fact, it's very, very difficult to analyse, because some of these things are stocks and some of them are flows. It's economically quite difficult to analyse. But nevertheless, between 15 and 20% of GDP enables all the rest. Not only does it enable the rest of the economy, it actually determines the quality of life that we lead to quite a high degree. But the key thing is that capital is involved, and every time the economy goes into a recession, maybe only 1 or 2%, because capital spend dries up, there's an enormous downswing, an exaggerated downswing in capital spending on construction. And because we don't do anything in the UK, we don't do anything to manage that downswing, we get a huge destruction of capacity every time we do it. It breaks up big organisations, it causes further and further fragmentation. So we now have hundreds of thousands of firms in the industry, and the only reason really we have them is because we broke up the bigger firms by having these exaggerated downswings. If we had a Keynesian government that actually spent money in the downswing, got much more for its money, we wouldn't have this highly fragmented industry that we do have. And the fragmentation is, that I think, an issue that maybe digitalisation can help us with. But whatever it is, we have a low cost of entry, low productivity industry, but with high returns on capital. Because you need hardly any capital, you make a high return on it. When you say a contractor makes a 1% margin, he's actually making that 1% on his own input of maybe less than 10% of the construction cost. So he's really making 10%. It's just that he's taking a risk on all the rest of it. The most pernicious side of it is that there's very little trust in the system. There seems to be a general view that nobody's going to make any money unless the rest of them lose it. The client's not going to have a successful project unless he screws margins down to the minimum. The main contractor is not going to make money unless he cheats his specialist contractors. The whole thing is based on everybody living on the margin, on the very edge of survival, and therefore they behave negatively, they behave adversarially, and my contract writing body is there to give them the contracts to do that with. Client risk aversion is actually one of the fundamental behavioural problems. By risk aversion, I mean people are actually destructively avoiding risk, so that they're actually creating more risk by their behaviour to try and avoid it. They're more likely to have failures in the supply chain because of their extreme fear of failure. Then another sort of problem is, because the buildings are built by chains that hand information over the wall, throw it over the wall, the building actually never performs as intended. And sometimes the performance gap between what was asked for and what was even certified and given permission for, and the real building is 4 to 1. Buildings consuming 4 times as much energy as they were expected to, buildings not being utilised remotely as they were expected to be. And then on top of that, we have, because of the demographics of the industry in the UK, we have a falling labour supply, falling trades participations, ageing out workforce. I gather the average tower crane driver is now approaching 60. Nobody wants to join the industry, it would appear, because you have to work outdoors. And you have to work away from home. It's really deeply uncomfortable. It's nothing like cool. Again, digitisation perhaps gives us an opportunity to stay at home, work 9 to 5, and have a robot do the difficult stuff. And then last but not least, the brightest minds in our industry are the lawyers who shepherd us into having disputes and then make their money out of those disputes. They advise us in a way which leads us into risk avoidance, in a way that's going to lead to a failure to avoid risk, because that's how they make their money. So they trap us through what they tell us is actually the sensible way of doing things. So can blockchain or any of the other digital technologies actually save us from this? Obviously, we are reducing risk considerably through the digitisation of design, building and operation. We're increasing value delivery. The single source of truth idea is a huge risk reducer. The phrase that has become very useful following Dame Judith Hackett's analysis of the dreadful fire at the Grenfell Tower is the phrase, the golden thread. Where is the information that we needed to understand how risky that building had become? Nobody could get hold of anything that told them how it was made, or how it had been maintained, or how it had been altered. As time went on, we now find out that it was altered in deeply destructive and risky ways that nobody knew. And that linking between the capital project and the project in operation is an absolute fabulous use case for all of this information thread that we are now much more able to deliver. And then we have the issue of the bringing together of the sensor-based smart building with the big model of it, which is being called the digital twin, and which I think is going to drive the unification of the construction side of the Venn diagram with the facility management side of the Venn diagram. At the moment, I'm going to a facility management exhibition next week, which I go to each year in London. They don't know what BIM is. They have absolutely no interest in it, but they're really keen on smart. Smart is rising up, and they think it will do everything. Yes, of course we know what's going on. We have all these sensors, but they don't know what the building object itself is at all. So there's a huge opportunity to link these two things up together. Next thing to note is the real resurgence of interest in collaboration and in continuity of relationships. If you say that where we are now is the result of continuous failure of relationships and continuous regression to a single transaction for everything, no team ever continues, no member of the industry is ever working on the same setup twice, and we think that's good value. Actually, it's the worst possible value. And rebuilding continuity, rebuilding chains and links is something which could only be supported. The problem is, every time we really get them, we go into another downswing and they all break up and everybody reverts to the old way of behaving. But a revival of construction management and a vertical integration of supply chains, all of that could be helped by the alliances that are being built up by digital practice. So it could well be that we move forward and maintain that even through the next downswing, which isn't far away. In fact, it's already happening in the UK thanks to the stupidity of Brexit. Not a political statement, a matter of fact. Alliance forms of contract are actually becoming a serious matter, much more interesting to clients in the UK. I'm involved in potentially publishing one called Insurance-Backed Alliancing, which is the next one on the block, but there are several others also. So I think we have some hopes that the digitalisation in one form or another, many of the things we've heard today, actually could begin to fight fragmentation, fight the breakup that occurs every time there's a downswing, fight the lack of trust, move us beyond the idea of zero-sum practice to actually creating value for the client, some of which we can capture and keep, paying ourselves in a rational and transparent and timely way. And the last thing I'll mention is that I've had a proposal to work with JCT to produce a machine-readable version of our main forms of contract, on the basis of which a lot of applications could obviously be thought about. We already do some digitisation. If you look at our website, you can buy our contracts in an editable form, and the way you edit them changes what you see. So it's already got some intelligence behind it, but we're going to go a lot further in the next few months. But a fully machine-readable contract, maybe that would be a good idea, and would form the basis of a lot more applications. So that's all I'll say for now. But one thing you might like to look at, published a month ago, BIM and JCT contracts. This is a guidance for lawyers, really, on how to populate the standard form of contract when you're using BIM, what not to forget, what to think about, and how to write a protocol which doesn't clash with the basic building contract. All of which we found out most construction lawyers simply don't know, and therefore they're exposing their clients to risks which they don't need to do. Not, of course, that they don't benefit hugely from those risk exposures that they create. So, thank you very much, and we'll join in the discussion later.